Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. My name is Garhen, and this afternoon we present Fear and Expectation. So, good afternoon, everyone. It turns out it's a long weekend this weekend here in British Columbia, Canada, and we had no clue, actually, until today, and that's rather funny as far as we're concerned. Realistically, the more you can let go of the idea of psychological time, the more you can understand that time itself is a psychological construct, that it doesn't actually exist, the more you're going to find time starts to go a little funny on you. And it's actually a lot of fun. It really is. Sometimes days can disappear, it seems. Hours and minutes all the time. Sometimes you have an abundance of them. It's very strange. So today we're going to talk about fear and expectation, and the reason is this is so important, and I'm going to keep coming back to these hot button subjects, okay, the subjects that really cause us all the issues. And of course, the core of that issue, the actual problem, and it's not really a problem, it's more of just something that has to be dealt with and trained, is our mind, the ego, our false identification with self. You see, the reality of it is we're essentially walking memory banks that have become self-aware, and that was part of the plan. Jackie, nice to see you. Blessings to you all as well, too. I've been abandoned. Kelly took the boy child, and they went to hit the bank to make a deposit and do a few other things. Because like I said, it turns out it's a long weekend here, and we really had no idea until today. The days all just sort of blend together. I noticed that sometime after 50, that as almost a decade has gone by since then. God help me. But time just sort of ceases to have relevance anymore. And part of that's, of course, because always letting go of that psychological sense of time. So we're going to talk about, speaking of time, we're going to talk about fear. And fear is very much time related in the sense that fears are always based in the future. And that future can be 1 second away, 1 minute away, 1 hour away, 1 day away, 1 year away, 1 death away. That's a big one. Yeah, it would have been nice to go camping this weekend. Man, that would have been fun. But we're still working on our pond and deck, and the good news is hopefully by the end of the weekend it'll be in good enough shape that I'll be able to take pictures of it. And we'll have a little talk about it, because, I said to Kelly last night, I'm feeling just a little bit happy with myself over the pond. And she says, oh, and I said, yeah. And I said, that's rare. I try not to become overly pleased with myself because, of course, it's really not my sense of self that's doing all the effort. It never is. So let's talk about fear. It's easy to become afraid that we'll lose track. Fears are all future-based. And that is the thing about fear, okay? And, here's what I've always said. No matter what is going to happen, it will happen. No matter what. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's going to happen, it will. Sooner or later, at some time or another, it will. And the reason being is because it's part of the experience of that sea of consciousness, okay? That sea of consciousness wants to experience everything, every outlook, every point of view, every expression of itself. It wants to know itself intimately at every level. And it does that through us. Through our manifestation here in this physical realm. And because fears are in the future and there is no future, we can let go of that fear. We can let go of that fear because the only place that fear exists is in our mind. Fear has never jumped out from behind a bush and attacked somebody. I know, there's been lots of opportunity when it would have happened to me. Years in the jungle, years in the desert, mountains, you name it, and never have I seen fear jump out and attack me. I have felt fear lurking within my mind. We've all experienced it. And we have to understand what fear is and how it comes about and why. And then we can deal with it a little easier. The first thing to understand is that the mind does not differentiate between what we would consider real, i.e. the boogeyman standing in front of us, and what we would consider unreal, the overactive imagination or daydream that we're having about the boogeyman. And the reason I'm using this example is last night, Kelly and I, we got to sleep about 11 o'clock, and we were back up this morning at 4 and went for a walk. Don't ask me how that happened, but I woke up and it was 3:56 this morning, so we got up and went for a walk. But it was, a little warmer evening last night, a little bit muggy, and I asked her why she always needed to have the sheet pulled up right over top of her nose, like this. And she didn't really give me an answer, so I said to her, the boogeyman, if a sheet's going to stop him, you probably don't have to worry about him to start with. But it just goes to show you, we have these fears, and a lot of these fears are built in at the survival level. They actually arise out of our reptilian brain. At the base of our brainstem, we have this older survival brain. It's the place where everything is looked after, actually. That's where our heartbeat is controlled from. That's where all the basic functions that take care of themselves. That could be seen as like the nexus of the body intelligence. It isn't that big lump. It's actually the really tiny little lump underneath it. And that tiny little lump is responsible for all sorts of genetic-based fears that come out of our history, our collective history. I.e. being afraid of the dark, being wary. Before light, before we were able to make fire and illuminate our spaces, nighttime was a scary place to be because, of course, all the predators could see quite well in the night, but human beings could not. So we have this ingrained fear of the dark. And this is what happens in the physiology of fear, okay? In the moment that we are thinking something that makes us fearful, and it is our thoughts that cause the feeling of fear. We're not talking about being startled. But that fear causes the exact same fight or flight reflex in the body's nervous system, in the body's limbic system, in the chemical production and transportation system. Part of that is that fight or flight reflex. So we can actually drive our bodies into a constant heightened state of preparation in order to flee or to fight, all through what's going on in our mind about fear, things that we're becoming afraid of, things that we're thinking negative thoughts on, and allowing that feeling of fear to grab a hold of us, and then more fearful thoughts are added on top of that, and pretty soon we are caught in the clutches of something that doesn't exist. How did it happen? We manufactured it. We made the phantasm ourselves. We manufacture fear within our mind, and then we allow it to grab us, and we forget instantly that we manufactured it. We can simply walk right through it. This is the truth. And I've faced fear many, many times. Many times. It is New Zealand, 9 a.m. Oh, it's early. Yeah, we all have these irrational fears. And, most of our fears, as a matter of fact, all fear is irrational, to be honest. And again, we're not talking about the fight or flight reflex. But we're talking about fear as it manifests through our thoughts. What happens, again, our body literally gets into this heightened state The chemical production goes up. Adrenaline is released into the system. The heartbeat begins to increase. The palms can become sweaty. Muscles can tense. The issue when we live in the states of fear and when we're facing fear that we're manufacturing on a regular basis is we're actually doing very real physiological harm, physical harm to this entity we would call our body, this physical manifestation. Okay, we literally do it harm through that fear. Not only that, we are putting out vibrations of fear into the cosmos. We are literally vibrating in fear. And like attracts like. You will either attract people who will engage in that fear and validate that fear for you and contribute into that fear, or in the worst case scenario, of course, you will find your fears being realized time and time again. And the question you have to ask yourself is, did I create my fear? And the answer is always yes. You see, the first time I ever had to jump out of a plane, I was in the military, and after sniper school, towards the end of sniper school, I went on an extended jump course. And, I at that point didn't really have a lot of fear in me as far as I was concerned. But I tell you, the first time you're standing on the ramp of a perfectly good cargo plane, looking out into a deep, dark, black night sky from an altitude of 30,000 feet with a little tiny oxygen bottle and mask on your face, dressed totally in black, and stepping out in trust that that little tiny pack on your back is going to perform some magical feat and save you. That was walking through fear. I stood there at the edge of the platform and I froze for a second. And I looked out and I felt the equipment on my back and I took a breath, and there was a little bit of a fog in the visor. And I realized that I was afraid. I was feeling fear at it. Now, there's two things you can do with fear, of course, and that is you can focus on the fact that you feel fear, or you can instead see that as a signal to plunge right through anyway. Kelly and I were talking yesterday, and she says, as she's woken up over the last 4 years, and that's really been the course of her waking up has been really accelerated this last 4 years. She said, I've noticed so many times that what I think was the right way to do something, I pretty much had to turn that completely around. And I said, yeah, it's funny how most of life is that way. When you begin to wake up, you realize that pretty much everything is exactly the opposite of what you thought it was. You don't need to run from your fears. You can instead use that as a signal to step through anyway. Now, again, we need to make sure that everyone understands fear is a chemically driven reaction. We manufacture it at an energetic level through our thoughts. This produces reactions within the physiology, the body construct. This energetic being we would call our body. And there are chemical releases that occur. There are pheromone releases. There are all sorts of things that go on when our thoughts turn to fear. And what we're seeing manifest is, of course, what's happening at the level of energy, at consciousness, at that sea of consciousness, then trickling down into the body. That vibration of fear is an aberrant vibration in the universe. It really is. And it's not that it does harm, but the vibration of fear will simply attract more. Why? Because the universe doesn't want you to be afraid. And the best way to make sure you're not afraid is to really make you afraid. And then begin to notice that every time you are, somehow you step through it. Somehow you make it. Storyboard number 2, and boy do I love these. I really do, because it helps keep me focused. and it gives me lots of screen animation, sort of, a little bit of color, and hopefully things sink in a little better when you get to read it as well. So it all starts, of course, with the awareness of fear. And again, we have to understand that when we are feeling afraid, we've kind of missed it. We have to be able to understand that it is our thoughts that drove us to fear. The fear does not exist. It doesn't. It is not real. Whatever will happen, will happen. Being afraid that it's going to rain tomorrow, okay, well, is that really fear? No. That's a language convention. And again, we want to make sure we understand the difference in this. Hello, Jennifer. Nice to see you. You're in third this time, losing your touch. That's the first thing Kelly said. She said, I won't be here to beat Jennifer on, because she had to run out to the store and to the bank. But, it's nice to see that you made it. Yeah, it turns out we have a long weekend here. Knew nothing about it. But, that's okay. Looking forward to it. Learning to be aware of fear, if you don't catch your thoughts, you can catch it as the presence of fear, as an energetic emanation. Because that's actually what you're doing, okay? When you think thoughts of fear, you're lodging a ball of dissonant energy. I look at them as, in the case of fear, I look at fear as kind of a greenish little ball. And you can get that ball of energy. Oh, you fell asleep. Hey, you know what? We had an afternoon nap too today. We took an hour because, like I said, we were in bed at about 11 and then back up before 4 this morning. So I totally get you. The afternoon naps are some of the best. But, fear, if we don't catch our thoughts, we can actually, you've heard the phrase, there was a lump of fear in my throat as I went to speak. Or there was a lump of fear deep in the pit of my tummy. And you notice people speak about locating it, right? That lump of fear is somewhere in the body. It is not, without a place. It has a three-dimensional place there. Take care, Sue. Good to see you. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the cup of joe. So you can actually sense the psychic emanation, the thought form emanation of fear as it is attached in the body through our creating it. And how are we creating it? We're taking some of our own essence, some of the energy of our being, and we're the ones who twist it. We're the ones who take that bright, clear, white light of consciousness, okay, and through our misinterpretation and misunderstanding of reality, through that egoic identification with self, we create these negative states within our being. And this state of fear, we'll be able to feel where it is. Becoming aware of that, sending that space within us love, sending that space within us light, letting go of the concept of fear, and choosing, always choice, always choosing to walk through the fear, even if we're shaking. Speaking your truth, even if your hands are shaking. Walking towards that dark lit tunnel, even though we know that our fear wishes to keep us from it. Because there's a light on the other side. And every time you step through fear, every time you look at fear and recognize the presence that you have created within yourself, you can just as easily choose to uncreate it, to walk through that fear, and to remind yourself, to remember over and over again that you are that highly powerful spiritual being. And fear can only have power over you should you lend it the power. As with everything, all the power we have to give away. No one can take your power from you. No one can take the sovereignty of your being. We sell it off. We hand it over. We give it away. And you don't need to do it. Expectation. This is another based one. And just as fear is based on the future and guilt is based on the past, well, expectation actually comes from the past too. And the reason it does is it's all based on our past experiences. And this is something the mind is exceptionally good at. And again, it's part of that survival thing. So, you go back, let's go back 10,000 years, okay? So 10,000 years ago, one caveman watches a saber-toothed tiger walk up and eat another caveman. Okay, mental note. Saber-toothed tigers tend to eat us. Stay away from them. Past experience has shown that if you see a saber-toothed tiger, it's probably a good idea to, run or leave it alone or pray it's not going to eat you. So that's where we learn that sort of thing, okay? So what happens at the mind level as soon as an event occurs, any event, your mind immediately goes hunting for the last experience of it. It goes back through its memory files, and it doesn't even have to be the same person or the same exact event or the same situation. It just has to be close. And your mind makes the connection right away. This is just like when this happened. But what happens in that moment? In that moment, we lose the truth. We lose reality. We've now entered the realm of sleep again. We've now ceased to be present. Why? Because we are looking through the eyes of our past experience. And this is what expectation is heavily involved in. We have an expectation that if you drop a full glass jug of milk from a height of 6 feet on a tile floor, it is going to break. Now that would be a reasonable expectation. We would call that a reasonable expectation. And then we also have unreasonable expectations. And did you ever notice that our language convention, very often gives us the hint whether what we're talking about is something real or something we should be paying attention to? And the idea that there's realistic or unrealistic expectations means that all expectations must be subjective. They're all based on the individual. Why? Because we can label them. We can label them as unrealistic according to who? Well, according to you, I guess. Or according to the person perhaps who you had placed the expectations on. They're all subjective. And because they're subjective in nature, we know that they do not belong to the land of the real. They do not belong to truth. They belong to the sea of illusion. And yet, look what happens when we make the choice to put our expectations on someone else. We make our thoughts, which are not reality and never are reality, we make it reality. We force it on someone. Well, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. Why? Because I expect you to. Why? Because that's what we agreed to. And now I have an expectation. Expectations are, again, not really, they have nothing to do with who's truly present, because expectations all rise out of past experience. And in that, we do not allow the evolution forward. We do not allow the new experience. We stay caught up in that old experience space, and we cease to be present. We become past-oriented again. What do we lose when we give in to fear and expectation? Thank you, Jennifer, because I was struggling to try and make that one really clear, how difficult it is with expectations and where they come from. What we lose when we live in these states is we lose our surety of being. We lose that powerful sense of self. Why? Because we are placing, through expectations, an example, our satisfaction or our happiness or our approval on our thoughts about how something should work out. And in the case of fear, we allow fear to deny us, and through this we deny ourselves, the ability to walk through it, to take that leap. You know, the whole of creation watches commitment levels more than anything else. You know, this is the way I said to Kelly. I said, you know, one of the reasons why we don't manifest very quickly here, and it's a very good thing, is we're never really sure what we want anyways. You know, we go out and we buy that new car and we have an expectation that it's going to make us happy, and pretty soon we're afraid because we can't make the payments anymore. All of these things take tremendous amounts of thought energy, tremendous amounts of energy away from the body matrix. And in doing so, you literally lose your surety of being. You become, I hesitate to use the word because the word doesn't actually do it and it has such a negative connotation, okay? But you do become weak. And you become weak in the sense that the fear and the expectations, both of those, tend to take us over. They tend to run the choices we make. Think about it. Our insane roommate living in our head runs our lives. Undue stress. Yeah, no kidding. The stress on the body, the stress on the entire structure of the being, the energy output to deal with things like fear and expectations that we place on others unrealistically is huge. And you're absolutely right in that. The other thing that happens, of course, is that we're no longer present. We go completely asleep in fear, and we go completely asleep when we start projecting our expectations in relation to what we've come to understand and experience about the past on others. And what we forget, and the reason why we are no longer present, is in the present moment, all possibilities exist. All possibilities. There's no need to be afraid because anything can happen. Anything. There's no need to have expectations because whether you have expectations or not, you're only setting yourself up. People will do what they will do. Events will turn out the way they will turn out. Why? Because there is an unspoken phrase behind everything we plan, everything we hope to do, and that is, but by the grace of that sea of consciousness. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know what the next minute is going to bring, the next hour, the next day. I don't even know sitting here whether I'm going to be alive in 2 hours or not. That's the truth of it. What does that do? That is joyous. It puts you on the leading edge. It puts you surfing on the wave of life, never knowing where this is going to be the minute that you're going to crash and wake up on the other side and go, whoa, what just happened? Because it's literally that quick. It's not some long, painful process. Trust me, from the moment between life and death is like boom, one thought to the next. You can let go of all that stuff and you can live right on that edge because that's where you are. We're always on the precipice. The only difference is it's when we're made, brutally aware of it, that we are on the precipice. Do we have that realization? And then one of two things happen. You will either live in a constant state of fear because you understand that there's no way to guide or control. There's no way to know what tomorrow, what the next moment will bring. But that's the gift. That's the fun of it. It's like being in a playground where there's a constant surprise waiting around every tree and you have no clue when they're going to pop out. And some of the children get afraid by that. Some of the children have expectations that there's going to be something popping out behind every tree and they get really disappointed when there's not. And some of the children, well, they just know to play. Why? Because they're getting the message, even in the mess. Isn't it? You're absolutely right, Jennifer. It is true, and it's freeing, and it's exciting. And you know what's the most freeing and exciting thing about it? It allows you to truly understand that you are here to revel in the moment you have. And that's all we have, is a succession of these moments. And it doesn't matter if it's a mess. It really doesn't matter, because when you give up on fear and you give up on expectation and you give up on guilt and you give up on all the other feeling states that we create through our thoughts, in a heartbeat, the messages start pouring in. The messages of love, of surety, of showing you how powerful you are as a spiritual being and expressing to you the wondrousness of our universe and that which you live in and are made of, that sea of consciousness. All of that begins to come alive. You'll see it. You'll hear it. You'll feel it in every conversation, in every tree, in every bird, in every view of the sky and the sunset. And always, always choice. And this is really important because there are no mistakes. And we have to be clear. If you succumb to fear, and everyone does sooner or later, we succumb to fear, all you have to do is become aware that you have succumbed to it. Look and see where you felt it in your body. Try to understand what it's relating to, and understand that it is not you. It is an energetic emanation, and you can, and we don't actually get rid of fear, okay? What we do is we constantly transmute energy. This is what we do through thought. Thought is energy. Thought is conscious energy, and it transmutes the energy matrix of our being all the time. We can transmute our being into a being of full love, radiant love, or we can transmute our being into a being full of hatred and anger. We do it all through the mind's power. To transmute energy, to change the signature, to change the vibration of energy. We can literally change our own vibrational state over time until you would vibrate out of sight to the average person. You know, you would literally kind of vanish, poof. You know, those adepts throughout history, people like Christ, Buddha, numerous others who have come and gone to show us the way. In Tibet, there is a long history of masters just disappearing into a light body, their entire being transmuting that energy, that base energy, directly into the higher energy state. And there being nothing left over except teeth and fingernails. When we let go of fear and we let go of expectation, we free ourselves, as Jennifer said, from so much undue stress. We lose a huge piece of the drama of ego. And this is what it's all about. If you'll notice, every single video, every single thing we've talked about, and there's, 150 videos now or so, we're all talking about emptying that cup. The grace is there ready, it's really like God is standing there with a giant milk jug full of grace, okay? And that jug is upended over top of us. It's a constant downpour of grace. The problem is our cup is still so full with our own crap that we never taste the grace. We keep drinking our own cup. All we have to do is turn that cup upside down for a moment and dump all that stuff out. Dump the fear out. Dump the expectation out. Dump the guilt out. Dump out the drama. And in faith, turn that cup upward and let it be filled with grace. Everything else will be added on to you at that point. That's the way it works. Letting go of fear and expectation, of course, understanding again that fears are not real. And again, we're talking about fear here. We're not talking about, it's probably not a good idea to hold on to that rope behind the car. to be afraid to do that and to do that. That's not fear. That's another word. We're not going to talk about that one today. Again, expectations are only thoughts. We would make those thoughts reality all the time, and we would hold other people to our thoughts and our expectations without any thought of theirs, without an understanding of how our expectations can stop us from seeing God in another, can prevent us from making use of the synchronistic event and getting the message that was there for us, or perhaps delivering the message. Walking through. The first way to walk through all this is to drop all judgment. Stop judging things. Don't judge something as good or bad for yourself. Don't judge another because they can't meet up to your expectations. Don't judge yourself because you are not meeting up to your expectations. We are perfect beings manifesting an imperfect form. And yet this form is perfect for what it is it's meant to do. And that's a beautiful dichotomy that we live in. That is the relative universe. In every perfection is an imperfection. In every fear is a strength. In every expectation is an allowing. Choose. It's always choice. Always was, always will be. If we have no questions on top of that today, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. It is a long weekend this weekend. We are going to host both our Sunday events. Our bandwidth is all back to normal and everything is working well. And I promise you pictures of the pond and deck I'm working on this weekend. And Kelly too. She's been doing a lot of assistance. Kelly's like the nurse in the outdoor work. She really is. She hands me the tools, I do the surgery and the operating, and then she bandages up my mistakes after and buries the bodies. Wood, not bodies, wood. Much love and namaste to you all. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. If you're somewhere where you have a long weekend as too, please enjoy it. As someone had said, perhaps out camping or doing something fun like that. Get some time in nature, and we will see you all Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.